I'd like to introduce Carlin Jackson. Carlin Jackson is the principal consultant of the Theo Wise David Limited, a venture capital-backed serial entrepreneur that has founded many companies. Through TWD, he utilizes his extensive technology background and passion for strategy and operations to deliver a host of services to industry and clients across the country. Over the last 15 years, Carlin's diverse project and professional experiences range from conducting academic research in conjunction with major hospital systems to software engineering with the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland and sitting on boards of multiple prominent organizations, including the Case Alumni Association. He's an engineer at heart. He's architected numerous systems across several industries vertical, both in B2B and B2C contexts. Carlin and TWD are often retained to lead international software systems engineering teams throughout the completion of many major project initiatives. Carlin holds 2 degrees from Case Western University, a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Computer Science from the Case School of Engineering, and a Master of Science in Finance from the Weatherhead School of Management. And I don't know if Carlin wants to hear this or not, but he is actually a former student of mine, so don't hold that against him. Above all else, Carlin values his faith in God, his parents, Cedric Sr. and Linda, siblings, extended family, and friends. So welcome, Carlin Jackson, for the keynote speech.
Thank you. Everyone, can you hear me well? All right, so hello everyone. Major congratulations to all recipients of this prestigious scholarship. I was very elated to hear from Chris and Terry when they reached out about the opportunity to speak with you all. And so please allow me just a moment of your time to share some free-flowing thoughts. I want to start with a funny story. It was 2011 in May, and I had the opportunity to give an address for my graduating high school class from Cleveland Heights High School. And back then, I still worked closely with my parents to help prepare words and my thoughts. And so in the weeks leading up to, we spent quite a bit of time figuring out what exactly we want to say, something cheesy, heartfelt, get everyone going, and then end it with just some major momentum, some great words at the end. So speed up through the day, ceremony, and I'm up there, I'm speaking, shuffling through my words, and it feels like it's going amazing. And then at the very end, the last page is not there. And so I'm there, I see, the video might still be online. I stand there and I'm just kind of frozen, and I just say something, I end it, people are like, man, you paused with such a weighty, deep pause. It was just so moving. And I'm like, you guys don't know, I was out of my mind scared. I had nothing. And so I said all that to say, I do not like to have prepared words anymore. That traumatized me forever. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna give a stream of conscious some thoughts. The topic I want to speak on is abstraction, modeling, and the power to affect positive change. Now that sounds like a lot of buzz and fuzziness, but I think, let me ask this. How many computer scientists do we have in the room? All right. So the idea of abstraction is one that should be quite familiar to us. But before I get into that, let me speak a little bit about my journey to STEM. I was a very young kid, youngest of 3, and I was always extremely curious about the world. And I'm grateful for an environment that fostered that curiosity. I was allowed to ask questions, to poke and prod, to understand why, how do things work. So, I remember vivid memories of being a very young kid, playing around in our attic with all our old equipment and stuff, jerry-rigging antennas to different VCRs, to different TVs. I'm grateful that many fires were not set with the very unsafe electrical situations I was creating in that attic. But after that, through school, maybe even church, I was allowed to play around and have access to different technologies and systems where the folks that were in charge of them were willing to kind of show me like, hey, this is how things work. This is why we do it. And now as you get older, we'll allow you to have some responsibility to actually manage and administer these things. And so it meant that I had a very great confidence and comfortability working with different systems and technologies. And so for that reason, it's a thank you to all those family members, all those folks in my life. That's why I'm here today. And so I would say, if you ever have an opportunity to foster the technological curiosity of someone younger, do it, because you never know how meaningful that might be. They maybe will be on this stage like this someday. Well, Cleveland Heights school system is kind of what I matriculated through. At Cleveland Heights High School, there was an opportunity to enroll in Cisco networking training. And it was pretty cool. While I was on the honors, AP classes and track, I also got to spend a couple portion of my days learning some practical technological things. And I'll try to speed this up, but being introduced to how to configure networking equipment, routers, things of that nature, there were some interesting things that happened with our school network as a result of that training. But the point is, again, it just really lit a fire underneath me to continue on the path of studying technology. I get here to Case, I meet Chris. I'm pretty sure day one, semester one, was it in here? Calc 121, or was it Calc, it was Calc 2, 122. Yeah, and so Chris is an awesome guy. If you haven't had the opportunity to meet him, he famously doesn't really use mics. He can boom his voice. But the point is, every step of the way, I've been in environments that have encouraged and fostered STEM education, and I'm very biased towards Case, but I have a lot of friends who have been at each of your institutions who have gotten STEM-related degrees, and all of them have gone on to do amazing things. So you should be proud of being able to graduate and be trained in institutions that do STEM education well. So again, finally I've reached to my topic, abstraction, modeling, and the power to do good. So all of us colloquially should understand the idea of an abstraction, maybe finding generalized common properties of a situation or a something that you can, maybe it's a simplified understanding. Sometimes when you think about education or teaching, when you use an analogy to try to explain something, you could think of that analogy being as a form of an abstraction, right? Well, in computer science or in software engineering, we oftentimes have to abstract different systems. Whether it is an existing system or a system to be built, we have to figure out, maybe it's the modeling the data flows, what data is coming into the system, what data needs to come out. Maybe the system to be built is one that simply transforms this data. Sometimes the data needs to be analyzed and augmented with other sources of information or metadata. The point is, for some models of software engineering, maybe a waterfall approach, you start off by gathering all those requirements, trying to model or design the different interfaces that you would need, and then you go about implementing it. Well, the value of building abstractions isn't just in the realm of software engineering. It's really across all forms and aspects of STEM, if not all life. We can all think about the different models or abstractions that are powerful and impactful to the different fields of study that we have. As a tech nerd, I would say one of the most important, in the 19th century, really in modern era, one of the most important models there are, I would say, is the model of electromagnetic systems. Anyone familiar with the Maxwell equations? Anyone? Yes, one back there. Maxwell equations. I would say the advent of all modern circuitry, understanding of radio waves, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Everyone has a device probably in their pocket that uses Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS systems, and things of that nature. And so the value of being able to model the properties of electrical systems, that seems pretty important, right? Another one would be, for example, who's heard of CRISPR? Okay, there you go. Genome editing. And the discovery of that is the recognition of, I believe it's the antiviral or immune response systems of certain bacteria, and the possibility of, wait, if we were to abstract this out to understanding in somewhat of a generic form, this is applicable to other scenarios and other possibilities. And so really the point of these words that I'm speaking is a valuable skill is recognizing when can something or a pattern or a system I see, can I abstract it? Can I generalize it? Can a model be made that is applicable to something beyond or greater than its current usage? And I think that type of creative mindset, dare I say entrepreneurial mindset, is something that can power positive change. I think any of us can think about the different, groundbreaking advances in some of our different STEM fields. And we can maybe all think about, or I've witnessed here on CASES campus where a researcher in one department gets wind of, maybe over coffee or water cooler or chat, hearing things that another field is working on and said, you know what, that looks just like this pattern I was studying over here. Have you considered applying this theory from my field over to yours? And how that type of cross-field collaboration can produce amazing results. One of the, as Chris mentioned, my background is I got a computer science degree and a master's of finance here at CASE. And part of the reason why I chose that particular educational path is because in the midst of all those conversations as a young man growing up, I was able to distill that there was two major lenses through which you can understand society and business. And for me, that was technology and finance. Almost every business today is a business that utilizes technology in some form or fashion. And I think by the very definition or textbook's definition of business, there's probably some type of commerce or money involved. And so I found that if you were to learn the technology systems or the technology that powers an industry, you could understand it well. If you were to learn how money comes into a business or industry and how it leaves, how it kind of does stuff as a productive while it's inside the business, you can also have a very powerful understanding of it. And so I founded a business called Theo Wise David right before I graduated that Master's of Finance. And through that, I work with a lot of different businesses, whether it's first-time entrepreneurs to maybe mid-sized businesses, where they'll come to me and I have an opportunity to honestly just have an initial conversation. They talk to me about, this is our operations, these are the things that we do. And they ask me either to help automate it, some facet of it. Maybe they need to seek efficiency, whatever the case may be. Every situation is a little different. And so my task is, one, can I understand the financial aspects of this situation? Can I understand the technological aspects? And then can I pattern match against prior client examples, maybe other situations I've had experience or exposure to, and see if there is some abstracted, generalizable solution or process or whatever that can apply to this situation and have some improvement to it. Some of my favorite examples to point out from prior client work, one is a business called Content Status. I won't bore you all the details of what that business does, but Imagine a worker who sits at a computer, split screen, has maybe a very long, nasty Excel sheet on one end, and then an internet browser on the other side, and they spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Their entire job is to manually search for stuff and compare it eye by eye, line by line in an Excel sheet. That's not the greatest thing in the world. But on the other hand, it's not a pointless job because these workers often have certain analytical insights that requires them to have eyes on it. And so the entrepreneur that I worked with, we were able to build a system that automated that process of analysis in the trivial aspects of comparison, and then present them with a UI or a user interface that allows them to just do the analysis that in their mind is what was necessary, right? So it wasn't necessarily about, just getting rid of the human worker and replacing technology, but it was about improving their quality of work life while also increasing their productivity 20-fold. A current project I'm working on is one that actually involves a use of large language models. So who all is familiar with LLM, that terminology? Or how about this? Who's all heard of ChatGPT, right? Okay. How many of you are familiar with the technological underpinnings of LLMs, right? So let me start with a very oversimplified definition of machine learning. And I, right now, apologize for the informality of these definitions. As someone who kind of hints at studying the philosophy of mathematics, I cringe at imprecise definitions. And so, again, I apologize if this offends anyone. But who's heard of linear regression? All right, scatter plot, draw a line, try to draw a line that's best fitted to those scatter points, right? And so root mean squared is the method of trying to minimize the error between that line and the points on the graph, right? So imagine, if who all had to do that by hand in grade school? I'm just curious. I had to do that. Yeah, so it was like manually adjusting and figuring out until it got a good fit, right? Well, imagine machine learning, this is a really bad oversimplification, is the automation of that manual process of maybe you start with just a straight line and it just tests the different values until it finds one, and it continuously evaluates the root mean squared output to find one that's best fit, right? And so it's an optimization function. Point is, it's useful for prediction, right? So if you wanted to see where a potential new value would be, you plop it online, blah, 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 blah. Large language models are basically a superpowered version of that in some regard. It's a model that you can be used to predict something. In the case of large language models, it's language. So it's like a powerful autocomplete is another way of putting it. When you type in Google, who is the, and you see those lists of suggestions, maybe it's president, who is the whomever, the mayor. That's kind of an oversimplified version of large language models. Well, one of the applications I'm working on, I feel like everyone has seen a million businesses sprout up about, here's how we can use ChatGPT to do this or that. There was one of my former classmates actually here runs a registered investment advisory firm. And they were curious, like, how can we use LLMs to scale up our operations? And the goal was, right now, that industry, unless you're like a really big guy who can work with everyone, you typically focus on high net worth clients, just because it's a numbers game. You'd rather have a few clients with a lot of money versus a lot of clients with little money. That way you can have more efficient, business processes. It's just cold numbers, right? But they felt like we want to be able to offer a certain level of services to those Gen Z and millennials who may not have reached a certain level of status in their career. Let's democratize access to the highest levels of financial planning and advocacy. And so how can we use technology to scale up the delivery of our analyses and services? And so I have been working with them over the past year and a half, and we've kind of figured out a great way to be able to collect all the information that one might give and deliver to an investment advisor or a financial planner. We've figured out, done a little bit of prompt engineering to figure out what's the right way to feed it to like Google, Gemini, ChatGPT, or Claude. We kind of use all three in different ways. And we're being able to produce, a very similar level of output analyses. And we're going to be launching that to general availability probably in autumn. Right now, we have a couple universities that we're doing pilots with, kind of through their student affairs, because the goal is to target providing this to, again, Gen Z and millennials. My point of mentioning that is, for each of these scenarios, the goal was, how can we make a situation better? Of course, there was a capitalistic or profit motive involved. I am an entrepreneur, but we found that when we start with a goal of purely how can we improve a situation, how can we make things better for folks, you often can land on powerful ideas and opportunities that are fertile for growth. And another thing that I'll point out is in every single one of those situations, there was some key abstraction, some key model that was important and really integral to the success of that endeavor. So the question I have for each of you is, yes, you might be familiar with the different models or abstractions that have been important to your fields, but could you be the identifier of yet another? Consider how things that you're working on, your research projects that you presented, their applicability not to just it itself, but to maybe other generalized idea. Is there a business that could be made of it? Could there be collaboration, powerful collaboration with another discipline that's maybe far away or close that can really unlock powerful results? Maybe another wave of research, maybe something even more. And so again, I cycle back to that title, Abstractions, Modeling, and the Power to Do Good. I'll just leave you with this. A mindset towards positively impacting others, I personally believe, is a mindset that is truly underlies entrepreneurism. And with that, I will bid you all good day. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Carl?
Yes.
So the page was empty when you went off.
Excuse me?
The page was empty when you flipped to it. That was the reason why you wanted to present without having a sheet of paper in front of you. It's fixing your mind.
It wasn't empty, it was just not there. But yeah.
Empty, same point.
But yeah, absolutely. I found that, everyone has seen people deliver where they're kind of reading and it kind of feels dispassionate. Now, I have witnessed those who are able to read and still be very engaging. But I found that, from feedback that, when I read and haven't been able to really ingest the core thoughts and ideas of what I'm speaking about, then, why am I up there, right? And so I find if I just study and really intentional about what I want to say, then I don't need a piece of paper. And while that might not mean that I have the most precise, delivery, if you were to read the transcript, your English teacher might not be too enthused about what it looks like. I find that I'm able to hopefully connect with the audience a bit better. Sure. VO Wise David Limited. If you want to know the story behind that name, it was simply me smirking by myself. And what I mean by that is, what's a name that sounds like, maybe a law firm? I have my uncle's a lawyer, right? And so I was like, how could I go about this? Well, my full name is Carlin David Theodore Jackson. My paternal grandfather's middle name is Wayne. My maternal grandfather's middle name is Tyus. So I took the W from Wayne, replaced the T in Tyus, and then it was Theo Wise David. And so I like to joke with, sometimes when I'm meeting with clients, I joke that the name of the business has a 100-year-old legacy, even though it was founded 6 years ago, right? But I find it's a kind of fun conversation starter when I meet with clients. Any other questions? Yes?
What are your thoughts on a lot of computer scientists actively working on creating AI models that are working to do what they study to work on in the future with models such as Devin, who's writing bug debugging scripts for code. What are your thoughts on that?
I find it's fascinating. I think the pursuit of innovation, there's two things I think that are always beneficial to it. It's the output of that pursuit, and then I would say the side effects of the pursuit in the midst of it. Oftentimes the techniques or tools or methodologies that are created while pursuing something can often be even more valuable than the thing itself. Who all has used Discord application, right? That was famously built as I believe it was just an internal communication tool, while the team that was building it was trying to produce a game engine, I believe. And the point I'm making is they were like, you know what? This tool is so awesome. Let's throw away the original desired output and pursue this side effect. I think we found in research sometimes, even if the results of that research don't quite pan out, the methodologies and the kind of route taken can yield fruitful results when applied to other scenarios. So to answer your question, when it comes to pursuing the creation of AI tools that can potentially do and replace or work alongside the current research and the things that computer scientists do, I say embrace it. I feel there's really yet to be technology that just fully renders hard sciences obsolete. Rather, we understand it, we take it in and figure it, now let's build on top of it. It's really the power of abstraction I'm talking about. I have professors who were students here back in the 70s, and the curriculum that they worked on back then, there was a lot of difference, some similarity, but the reality is technology advances, and it doesn't mean that the need for pursuing certain fields goes away. It's just the nature of it changes.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
This is a lot more like an emotional thing, but does the direction AI is moving scare you at all? Not necessarily about your career or anybody else's, but...
Yeah, the question is, does the direction AI is moving in scare me? I cannot say that I would say yes and no. I have concerns about the application of it, the unwise application of technology in general, I would put it that way. I think we have to be particularly careful when we start talking about things that can affect others' livelihood or health. So maybe it's policy considerations. Do we want to blindly, connect ChatGPT up to our judicial process? Like, hey, let's just, copy and paste all the court notes and have ChatGPT make a verdict. Now, that's an extreme example, but we probably don't want to do that, right? But in reality, when we start talking about maybe policing, the usage of models for profiling, or if we're talking about healthcare, we have to make sure that there's enough guardrails to ensure that the outputs and results that we get are ones that truly make sense of what we want. If we're talking about just the raw power of the technology itself and those potential implications for society, I think we're all aware of we probably all have good imaginations on maybe the furthest extent or extremes of what artificial intelligence could do. But I would just say from the current state of the art and technology, I still don't think we're very close at all to a notion of general artificial intelligence. And so at some point, Moore's law, in terms of how much compute we can throw at a problem, is going to run up against the limits of our ability to architect these AI systems. And so again, unless there is that golden strain of research that really unlocks the notion of general artificial intelligence, I'm just not quite yet concerned. I think it's more about the intersection of people and the technology and how far are we willing to integrate it into our daily lives. Before I get to you, any other questions? Yes.
So I actually have two questions. The first one is, so my brother works at the AI lab at Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
He has this idea to sort of invest in business optimization. Again, like with consulting with other businesses to try and help them. I don't really understand what he's talking about, but I was just wondering in general if that's similar to what you do.
I think so. And to be clear, you said he works for the AI lab in Stanford, but also consults with other businesses to help do what, you said?
Use like optimization formulas or whatever to
Yeah. So I think in some regard, yes, there's a similarity. It sounds like your brother is more specialized, and that's like the core focus. But when I hear the word optimization, that can mean a lot of things. I think to the field of operations. I'm kind of a nerd on things like this, but the field of operations management and things of that itself, I can go really deep on that. But the point is, any business, any project, any organization, if you think about its workers, what do they do? What is their job role? What's the CFO, the accountant, the treasurer? They do a certain job. Sales does a certain job. Marketing does a job. The different workers do jobs. Collectively, their roles and responsibility day to day makes up the operations of that business. And I think an example of an inefficient process is, imagine noticing a worker makes 3 left turns, right? And you say, hey, maybe just make 1 right turn, right? I don't quite know the type of optimization your brother does, whether it's looking at operations, whether it's looking at technological systems, because again, that analogy of making 3 left turns, that's not just things that humans might do. I've seen some code that I'm telling you, it convert from one data format to a third data format to another one just to land back at the same one. Like, he could have just passed it right through, right? Again, it's possible that his focus on optimization could really hit at any level. But if he works in an AI lab, I wouldn't be surprised if it's about applying machine learning or AI to that task of optimization. And I would encourage you maybe to kind of ask him to prod a bit more. Like, ask him if is he dealing with, transforming data? Like, basically, what exactly is being optimized, and how is AI or machine learning being used to accomplish that? And that might spur an interesting answer from him. Yes.
You talked a lot about generalizing.
Yes.
Mixing 2 fields together.
Yeah.
And all that's based off of usually a lot of ground experience and understanding yourself. A lot of people don't have that experience, and says this to them. How do you go about translating this new understanding that you have to the people that you're working with?
Yeah. So I don't have a perfect prescription. I would just say conversation, communication, and collaboration are the kind of the fertile soil through which those moments and opportunities could come. We're all different. We all process, interpret information, perceive the world differently. And so one formula for, maybe spurring or catalyzing certain intellectual awakenings might be different from person to person, right? But I think, honestly, from my perspective, sharing this idea with you all, hopefully it plants a seed of curiosity to say that indeed is possible. And so whereas maybe someone wasn't looking for or considering how that moment might occur, maybe just the act or the suggestion that it's a possibility might help produce the set of circumstances that might make one recognize, hey, this might be something that's applicable or a candidate for collaboration. Does that make sense? Yes.
How do you think the use of AI will affect the educational landscape for the upcoming years?
That's a good question. I feel like that's a question I want to ask Chris. I was a TA for my last 2 years here at Case, and I lectured in operating systems, a computer science course. And funny aside, my other TA was a PhD student, and he was still learning English as a second language, and he just really wasn't confident speaking in front of folks. And so he struck a deal. He said, Carlin, if you do all the lecturing, I'll do all the grading. And I don't know if anyone in here has ever had to grade as a TA for a class of about 80 plus. I'm telling you, that was the perfect deal for me. I was like, I'll happily get up here and just blabble for 50 minutes a week. He can handle the grading. I say this to say my perspective really only comes from that opportunity to TA. I found that it almost doesn't matter how perfectly you can regurgitate a textbook, how perfectly you can memorize algorithms, equations, formulae, whatever. It's about when you're presented with a problem or a situation, are you able to take the knowledge that you have, pair it with any resources at your disposal, and come to a quality solution? There were times when calculators weren't a readily available resource. And so necessarily instruction was conducted in a manner that assuming its lack of availability. At some point we realized you're always gonna have a calculator, so you might as well train with one. So likewise, I think, but that's with limits, right? Because I think there's still opportunities where you really do truly need to make sure someone understands the theoretical aspects or underpinnings of what's being taught. You can't always rely on a calculator as a crutch and using it as an example. So likewise, in the midst of industry, what does industry look like? What are the major, real life applications of a certain field of study look like? If the best practice, the common way of doing something involves usage of certain tooling, education should not be scared to figure out how to embrace that. So in the computer science world, usage of things like my Copilot, I believe, for programming and basically powerful autocomplete for writing code. If anyone has ever interned or worked in the business, who all has heard of Stack Overflow and copying code from Stack Overflow? Okay, would you ever just copy something from Stack Overflow and commit it and deploy it to production? No. You would have to really, truly understand what it's doing to be able to spot where it might be wrong. That's never gonna go away, I don't believe. Until we have true general artificial intelligence, there's always gonna need to be true basic human understanding. And so I think the earlier that we teach students how to work with tooling and to still become, at least in the software world, to be a true software craftsman, to be a true software engineer, you have to understand how to use the tools of the trade. So that's my thought. Any other before we turn? Yes.
So other than the idea of abstraction, is there any idea from computer science that you find to be particularly impactful to practical usage?
the question being, are there any other ideas from computer science that I found to be just good for general practical usage? That's a great question. Off the top of my mind, I don't know how general this is, but I'll just kind of speak to myself, my own personality. Learning programming at the age that I did, it has certainly shaped how I interpret natural language, the world around me. It's, you know, the way I was instructed here about learning how to program, you know, in a way you almost parse the code in your mind. You kind of follow the control flow, the data flow. So in a way, thinking very logically in an ordered manner, I've found that in my consulting work, I'm able to draft contracts because, you know, legalese in a way is a formal language of itself. And I'm not dumb enough to act like I'm a lawyer, so I still have counsel that I will have kind of overview things. But I found that copying simple agreement templates online, modifying them for the specific scenario, 99% of the time it's sufficient. Again, I have it double checked, but instead of paying, multiple hours for an attorney to draft it, I'm just maybe paying 1 hour for them to verify something that I've created. Now, again, that's just me personally. I would say that maybe if we were to generalize that idea, being able to program and think in that structured, formal manner for, I don't know how to say it, just maybe very logically, I do feel that that helps in a greater sense about how to go about doing other processes in a maybe more efficient way. Recognizing 3 left turns can become right scenarios. There's a reason why the law school loves when engineers apply. I'll just put it in that point. I believe you had...
Yeah, do you think that as we continue to apply AI to more theoretical and advanced topics, such as unknown theoretical physics or anything like that, or optimization where there might be a solution but it might be very small, there's a possibility that it's going to develop a kind of personality as we give it more and more resources? Obviously, ChatGPT, just because of the structure, it can't have a personality. It just delivers information. But once we apply it to more theoretical things where the answers are more foggy, do you think that's a possibility?
I don't know. I don't know if everyone had the question, but basically as we continue to apply artificial intelligence to increasingly, further or advanced things in the certain realms of physics or whatever, is it possible that AI could develop a personality or just a certain flair aspect that's foreign to how we currently understand it to be? I don't know. I'm not afraid to say I don't know. As a computer scientist, I am not a trained physicist. I'm not a trained really I don't have an advanced education on all the other fields of STEM. I do have the knowledge and experience I have in computer science, and I use that to say, it kind of just goes back to the question of general artificial intelligence. Do I think that AI will really get to the point where it can evolve in of itself, essentially, is the question being asked. I don't currently see any science or cutting-edge research that would suggest that we're quite there yet. Any other questions? Yes.
What's the number one piece of financial advice you give to a college kid?
A college kid? That's a great question. I would say the sooner that you can understand the average career outcome of your chosen major, the better, and allow that to start impacting your planning for your career. I'm never going to tell someone not to pursue their passion. I just ask that you pursue it with just a clear-cut, objective, realist view of what that can imply for that first 10 years post-graduation. So I've literally given this advice to a family friend who I'm trying to remember if it was, I think they were an art major. And so I asked them, pursue the art major, but do you have industry mentors? Do you have somebody or some type of connection? Do you have an idea of what your actual career pursuit would be beyond that? And I said, what is the business of art world? Are you a creator? Are you painting? Do you want to own or operate a gallery, et cetera, et cetera? And then my almost standard spiel, it all leads to maybe me advising, if you find that you have certain uncertainty with what the career outcome of that major would be, consider pairing it with a minor in business. Because almost no matter the discipline, there is an industry or business associated with it. And if you have good business sense, you're going to find a job within it somehow. Even if it's not necessarily as a creator, you still might be in the outskirts, the tangential jobs surrounding, that field and area. And so maybe that would be my advice, that no matter what you study, understand the typical career outcomes, whether people generally go to get a graduate degree or if they go to industry, what that looks like, what are the financial implications of that, and does that actually align with your expectations when you first signed up for that major? And if not, do something about it now rather than waiting till then. Yes?
So, with AI, do you think that there will be a problem as the materials that the AI draws from prompts AI generated?
That is a very good question. That's actually a very good question. There is a notion of hallucination that's kind of prevalent. If anyone's ever used ChatGPT and it puts out something that just sounds so amazing, like, man, this answers, like, this would be a perfect way to write this essay doing this class. And then you find out that, the works that it cited are completely made up. I think there's actually some young attorneys, I don't know if it was in New York, who filed briefings in a case with just completely made up case law. And I think they got disbarred. So to your point, the way that these large language models work is they're basically scraping publicly and sometimes not publicly available information and content online. Well, I think what ChatGPT was, some of its first versions were majorly trained on Twitter and Reddit and things of that nature. Well, we all know that people are using these tools right now for the things that they post online. So it's only obvious that the next rounds and versions of these models are going to start picking up content that was produced by earlier versions of themselves. It's a great question. And to the extent that there's a solution to it, I don't know. I think the question is, how good are current technology systems at detecting things that have been generated by large language models? It's kind of a crapshoot. So it stands to reason that when it comes time to train the next models, they really won't be able to have good success at it either. Yes?
What are your thoughts on the Nightshade program, speaking of how ChatGPT scrapes the internet with the people who have been creating like poisonous documents for ChatGPT to throw off its generative structure?
I am not too familiar with that, but you're asking about folks, I imagine a coordinated effort to produce malicious content with the hopes that it is picked up by these AI systems and potentially can influence its output. I mean, to the extent such a coordinated effort exists, I honestly cannot speak to that. I would say the theoretical idea of it existing is very real. because there's proven history, even if not necessarily we can speak to actual usage of those types of techniques and tooling in other aspects of society, at least within the computer realm, there is published research about mechanisms for how you can really, I guess you could say, poison the water, poison the sources, or introduce malicious things into systems in a kind of a sneaky manner, if you will, for that purpose. Like, that's literal published research. And so can it happen? Sure. To the extent it's currently happening at a coordinated, wide, massive scale, I have no way of knowing. Where are we on time, Chris?
I'm sorry, well, I'm not really sorry. This has been wonderful. It's really been beneficial to us because you've been working on trying to get your certificates and everything done. I just got a text that they're pretty much done. And Carlin's been speaking for almost an hour now. And I asked him to do 20 minutes. So I want to thank you one more time. Give us a few minutes. You know, it's one of the benefits of this program is that you get to hear from somebody in the business that does the work, and you can ask those kind of questions that you did. So really, I really appreciate you coming out today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll have the certificates and we'll be all ready, okay? Thank you.
Thanks for having me.